Today, we'll be telling the fascinating story of one of the world's most successful rebrand moves and what it has to do with race cars. This is the story of how Red Bull, a humble energy drink from Thailand, broke through market restrictions and a lack of investors and country borders, had a complete change in its target market and became a household name in not only Formula One, but most of the world of extreme sports. We're talking insane stuff like cliff diving and mountain biking and windsurfing and rock climbing. There's even a relatively new one. It's called air racing. Whenever people are engaging in high-risk competitive activities, all you have to do is look around carefully and you are sure to find a Red Bull logo hanging around somewhere. However, for today, we'd just be talking Formula One, since it was one of the first they got involved with. Probably what they are most popular for, aside from the caffeine soda. How did they come around to it? Whose idea was it? Stick around to find out. First of all, Red Bull is currently the highest selling energy drink in the world. It is also the third highest selling beverage, just behind Pepsi and Coca-Cola. This basically means they sell upwards of about 7.9 billion cans each year. Plenty enough to generate a $6 billion revenue. But it wasn't always like that. Before Red Bull founded its way to Europe and eventually America, it already existed in South Asia, where a Thai pharmacist named Yovidya Chalayo created it. And I guess you could say it was doing well, considering how popular it was among the truckers and rural labourers, and back then in the 1970s when it was known as Krating Daeng. The Red Bull you know today only started when Austrian businessman Dietrich Mateschitz visited Bangkok on a business trip and came across the product, which cleared his jet lag. This was in 1982. Fast forward to 2 years later, he and Chalayo officially launched Red Bull, splitting the company between them and Chalayo's son. Dietrich Mateschitz is largely responsible for Red Bull's international success. One of the terms of his agreement with Chalayo was that he would control the company's activities, and he did a hell of a job. The current version of Red Bull, which is carbonated and not so sweet, was his idea because he wanted to make it taste more European. This wasn't enough to launch the company though. Red Bull didn't hit the shelves until 1987 because they had difficulties getting people to invest. So Dietrich had to market his product from his own pocket, and he got really creative with it. Red Bull hosted these events where people flew homemade planes into the water called Flugtag. They would even litter empty cans of the drink all over crowded public spaces. They also targeted the club scenes and universities, where they would throw these lavish parties hosted by their student brand managers, which is just the official name for the coolest kids on campus. In just 1 year, Red Bull was extremely popular in Germany, even though it was banned there. Teenagers would risk crossing the border to buy it in Austria. While they were taking the universities by storm, Red Bull also started entering the sports industry. Just 2 years after launching, Red Bull signed a sponsorship deal with the Austrian ice hockey team EC Salzburg in 1987. But before then, in 1985, Mateschitz, who was a motorsports fanatic, approached Gerhard Berger at the paddock of the Austrian Grand Prix, where he was racing. Although he was offered a meager sum, just $10,000, Berger agreed to the deal. And that was how Red Bull appeared on the stage in 1989. By 1995, they extended their sponsorship to Sauber. Before then, Formula One sponsorships with beverages were unheard of. Alcohol and tobacco companies? Maybe, but not beverages. Most companies just saw it as too expensive an investment to make. But none of that was going to stop Mateschitz. In 1999, Dietrich Mateschitz entered a deal with a close friend that led to the birth of the Red Bull Junior team. The friend in question was Helmut Marko, a former driver who started well in the 1970s, winning the 24-hour Le Mans race in 1971 while he drove for BRM. He, however, had to quit competing officially when a flying stone broke through his visor and blinded his left eye during the French Grand Prix in 1972. Since he could no longer race, he began managing drivers. One of them was Gerhard Berger. He also put together a team called RSM Marko, which became the Red Bull Junior team when he began managing it with Dietrich Mateschitz. And that is when things started to get really interesting. The same year that Mateschitz and Marko took control of the Red Bull Junior team just so happens to be the same year Ford bought Stewart Grand Prix. This outfit was actually started by a two-time runner-up, three-time Drivers' World Championship winner, Jackie Flying Scott Stewart, and his son Paul in 1996 with sponsorship from Camel. Stewart Grand Prix entered Formula One in 1997 and was quiet until 1999 when Rubens Barrichello and Johnny Herbert won a series of podiums and the European Grand Prix respectively. However, things didn't get any better after Ford purchased and rebranded them as Jaguar Racing, but the deal lasted until September 2004 when Ford put it up for sale. Going by how much they sold it, Ford was obviously not trying to make a profit from the sale of Jaguar Racing. The entire outfit was sold for a shocking price of, wait for it, $1. And yet no one attempted to purchase it until a day before the sale closed. On the 15th of November 2004, Helmut Marko and Dietrich Mateschitz signed the dotted line and bought Jaguar Racing, changing its name to Red Bull Racing. Despite the cheap purchase cost, the deal actually included a caveat that stipulated that Red Bull invest up to $400 million in the outfit within 3 seasons. That marked the end of Red Bull's sponsorship of Sauber, which was already starting to wear thin since Peter Sauber, principal of the team, refused to make Enrique Bernoldi drive in the Constructors' Championships of 2001 like Mateschitz asked him to. Things started changing pretty fast for the new team, with Mateschitz and Marko running the corporate side of things and multiple-time Formula 3000 winner Christian Horner as team principal. By 2006, Red Bull had made the podium in Monaco with David Coulthard at the wheel. The same year, Mateschitz and his former partner Gerhard Berger bought Italian team Minardi and renamed it Toro Rosso, which is Italian for Red Bull. The Red Bull Academy also sort of began during this period, and it was really quite easy. Marko's connections within the world made it quite easy to scout as many young talents as possible and just speed them across all the levels in their junior team with the end goal of placing them on Formula One. You could argue it wasn't really helpful for the drivers, but then it's the same program that worked for the likes of Enrique Bernoldi, Scott Speed, Christian Klein, Vidantonio Liuzzi, and many more like that. It's almost commendable how much they are willing to work with relatively inexperienced drivers. Red Bull drivers are famous in the world of motorsports for being the youngest to do it, from Christian Horner to Sebastian Vettel to Max Verstappen. There's even talk about manufacturing their own Formula One engines, and all of this is at great personal risk, since roughly 97% of their revenue still comes from the sale of energy drinks, and about 1/3 of that goes into their sports sponsorships.